Have you ever heard the whispers about Blackridge Station? Kind of place where the silence is so heavy it feels like it's crushing your chest. That's where our story begins. On a platform wrapped in a thick, curling fog. Most nights trains come and go, but tonight was different. A whistle, sharp and sudden, sliced through the quiet. Impossible. The schedule was clear. No trains until dawn. Then, from the murky depths, it emerged. A train unlike any other. Its carriages were black, slick with moisture, and the windows seemed to swallow the dim light, a faint glow pulsed from within, like a dying heartbeat. On the platform, three friends, Aaron, Claire, and Malik, had lingered too long, lost in jokes about the station's urban legends, ghost trains, vanished passengers. Aaron had just laughed it off. Ghosts don't exist, he'd said. Then the train appeared. It hissed and creaked as it stopped. The sound of a century-old sigh. The doors slid open, revealing an interior lit by a pale, flickering light. The air smelled of damp wood, decay, and something metallic that made your stomach twist. Claire's voice trembled. "Do we get on?" Malik, his curiosity winning over fear, said, "I think we have to see." They stepped aboard. The doors slid shut behind them with the finality of a coffin lid. The carriage was pristine yet empty, but the windows, they didn't show the foggy platform. They showed an endless, inky darkness where fleeting, hollow-eyed faces stared in from the void. Aaron forced to laugh. Just a reflection, light playing tricks, but Claire saw one face linger, its mouth open in a silent, agonizing scream. The train lurched forward, unnaturally smooth, gliding into the night. The lights flickered violently, and with each flash, more tormented faces pressed against the glass. Then came the first sound from the carriage behind them, a low, dragging groan. "Did you hear that?" Claire whispered. "Something's following us," Malik confirmed. Suddenly, a cold wind swept through the carriage, plunging them into absolute darkness. The shadows were no longer outside. They were in the aisle surrounding them, hundreds of silent, screaming figures, their cold hands clawing at the air. A chorus of whispers filled their minds. "You should not have." "Come, join us," Claire screamed as unseen hands clamped over her mouth. A towering figure with glowing eyes emerged from the aisle, its mouth opening impossibly wide, washing over them in a wave of icy despair. Aaron threw a punch, but his fist passed right through it. The entity's hollow, gurgling laughter shook the very walls of the train. The lights flickered back on, revealing a new horror. Every seat was now occupied by pale, decomposed figures, their unblinking eyes fixed on the three friends. One raised a skeletal, beckoning hand. An invisible force gripped Aaron's chest, tightening, stealing his breath. From the floor, a cold, wet hand shot up, whipping around his ankle. More hands erupted, grabbing at them from all directions. "Run," Malik shouted. They sprinted down an aisle that seemed to stretch into infinity. Every door led back to the same carriage. The reflections in the windows were twisted, decayed versions of themselves. In the middle of the aisle, a little girl in a tattered dress appeared. Her eyes were black voids. She smiled as her head twisted slowly, unnaturally. The train jolted. The figures vanished. Carriage was empty again, but outside the window was no longer Blackridge Station. Only an endless, black void. The whispers returned, louder now, inside their heads. "You are ours now," slowly. Passengers began to reappear. The faces of those who had vanished from the station years ago, their bodies twisted and contorted. A tall conductor emerged from the darkness, his face a shadow, only his glinting white teeth visible. He raised a hand. "You belong to the train now." The train. Doors opened one last time, revealing the platform at Blackridge. But it was ancient, decayed. As their feet touched the platform, an unseen force yanked them back inside. The doors slammed shut like a predator's jaws. The conductor's laughter echoed as the world outside the windows twisted into a nightmare landscape. They were not just trapped on the train. They were trapped in a world created by it. Their bodies grew stiff, their minds screamed, and then, just like all the others before them, their forms began to change, becoming pale, hollow, weightless. The last thing they felt was the cold grip of eternity as the ghost train hurtled onward, into the night, into the void, forever. Back at Blackridge Station, the platform remains empty, waiting, as the faint echo of a whistle promises that soon another soul will arrive and vanish. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this journey into the dark, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. We have plenty more nightmares to share. The train hurtled on, but we weren't just moving through space anymore. We were in its dimension, a place where reality itself had warped. Aaron, Malik, and I were floating, weightless, surrounded by ghosts. Their hollow eyes watched every move, every shudder. The silence was so complete that each of our heartbeats felt like a war drum, and every breath tasted like metal and ash. Aaron reached out, trying to touch something, anything, but his hands passed right through the walls, through the spectral figures, through the very fabric of this nightmare. Malik opened his mouth to scream, but no sound came out. It just vanished into the suffocating blackness. My own sobs were like ripples in a pond, seen but not heard. We weren't on a train anymore. We were inside it. This was its world, a dimension where fear had weight, where terror took on a physical form. Then the conductor appeared again. He was closer this time, his shadow stretching in impossible ways, like claws reaching for us. His teeth gleamed in a light that pulsed like a monstrous heart. A whisper echoed, not from his lips, but directly inside our minds. You will become part of us. The words burrowed deep, twisting our thoughts, crawling into our memories and rewriting them. Around Aaron, his own worst fears began to materialize. He saw the faces of people he'd lost, their mouths open in silent screams, their eyes empty and accusing. Spectral fingers reached from the walls, clawing at him, pulling him deeper into his own personal hell. From the back of the train, a sound finally broke the silence, a deep, guttural moan that rose and fell like the train itself was breathing. I turned my head and just froze. The moan came from a writhing mass of shadows that was slowly taking shape. They were the passengers who had died on this train, their bodies distorted, fused together into one crawling, horrifying entity. It moved along the floor, the walls, the ceiling. Their mouths moved, screaming silently, but we could feel the vibration of pure, raw malice in the air. Malik tried to run, to just move forward, but the floor beneath him turned to liquid. It was a thick, black tar that tried to swallow him whole. He flailed, his silent screams contorting his face as Aaron reached for him. But his hands passed straight through Malik, just like they had through everything else. A new kind of panic set in, a terror so profound it felt like a physical weight pressing down, threatening to crush our bones. Suddenly, with a deafening slam, the carriage doors burst open. Outside the windows, the void twisted, offering glimpses of impossible train stations. They were places we'd never seen, yet they felt horribly familiar, like corrupted memories. One platform was filled with children, all frozen mid-stride, their eyes pitch black, their mouths locked open in eternal, silent screams. Another showed a city crumbling into dust, its streets crawling with shadowy figures whose heads swiveled at impossible angles, all of them tracking the train as it passed. My eyes landed on a seat near the front of our carriage. A small boy was sitting there, rocking back and forth in a tattered school uniform. His head twisted slowly, impossibly, until he was staring right at me. A thin trickle of blood ran from his eyes, but he was smiling. The laughter that followed wasn't human. It echoed inside my skull, a piercing, maddening sound that made me double over in pain. "We have to get to the engine," Aaron whispered, his voice strained. But the corridor ahead was gone. In its place was an endless tunnel of shifting shadows filled with faces, all screaming without a sound. The train shuddered violently. The lights flickered, revealing a new horror above us. Rows of passengers were floating in the carriages overhead, staring down with eyes that seemed to pierce right through to our souls. These were the ones who had tried to escape before, their bodies consumed and reshaped by the train's malevolent will. A metallic screech ripped through the air from the front carriage. The conductor materialized there, now a giant figure stretching from floor to ceiling, his teeth bared in a grin that broke the laws of anatomy. Behind him, a wall of faces pressed forward, and all their mouths opened at once, releasing a scream so powerful it felt like our minds were being torn apart. Aaron clutched his head as blood trickled from his ears. The sound was carving fear directly into his being. I reached for him, but hands that weren't my own grabbed me. Long, spindly, clawed shadows had taken form, gripping my arms and legs. Malik tried to pull me free, but the black floor erupted. Skeletal arms shot out, wrapping around his legs and dragging him down into the darkness. Our silent screams were swallowed by the void, replaced by the relentless whispers. "Join us, forever, never leave. You belong to the train." Time lost all meaning. The train began to fold in on itself like twisted origami, each new configuration revealing an infinite landscape of horror. Faces pressed against the windows from the outside, their expressions of terror mirroring our own. For a second, Aaron saw his own reflection staring back at him, but its eyes were empty and black. its mouth wide in a permanent, silent scream. The air turned ice cold, cutting through us like knives. A thick mist poured from the ceiling vents, forming ghostly shapes that drifted through the carriage. A spectral nurse dragging a gurney piled high with wailing bodies, a conductor with multiple heads, their eyes blinking out of sync, a passenger whose face split open into a grotesque, inhuman grin. Each apparition was terrifyingly real. Malik's vision blurred as the shadows from the walls reached for him, pulling him into the very structure of the train. He thrashed, but the shadows just multiplied, merging into one massive, writhing entity. I screamed, flailing against the figure holding me, and at that moment Aaron felt solid ground beneath his feet. But it was the wrong kind of solid. The floor was now made of the bodies of previous passengers, their skin cold and clammy under his shoes. A corrupted whisper called to him from above, a voice he recognized. "Aaron, stay with us." He tried to answer, to scream, to do anything, but his mouth opened and nothing came out. The train just kept moving, pulling us deeper and deeper into the void. Every carriage was a theater of horror, a gallery of death, a stage where the living and the dead were forced into a twisted dance. Conductor appeared one last time, towering over everything. His shadow consumed the lights, the seats, the passengers. He raised a hand and the very air seemed to solidify, pressing us down, holding us in place. Aaron looked at me, then at Malik. Our faces were pale, frozen masses of terror, and in that moment he understood. Screaming wouldn't help. Running was pointless. The train wasn't just a place. It was a predator, an ancient entity that fed on fear and despair. It was feeding on us. Then a flash of light, bright and blinding, illuminated every single detail of the nightmare. For one horrifying second, we saw it all. The contorted bodies of the passengers, the boy with the bleeding eyes, the skeletal arms reaching from the floor, and the conductor grinning down at us, omnipresent and omnipotent. And then, just as quickly, the light was gone. The darkness that returned was thicker, heavier, and filled with a new sound. The whispers had turned to laughter. We could feel our own minds bending, breaking, being reshaped to belong to the train. Aaron clawed at the air, a final, desperate attempt to hold on to who he was, to remember us. But the whispers were relentless, echoing in the dark. Join us forever. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this journey into the dark, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another story from the void. Stay safe out there.